Well, good evening, everyone. On this very cold night here in South Carolina, a very warm welcome to the Abbey Forum for Contemplative Ecology. We're really honored this evening to have two of the really most prominent contributors to the whole field of religion and ecology today, Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm, as our presenters tonight. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sam, our interviewer, to introduce them and to begin our dialogue.
Thank you so much, Father Garrick. I hope you can all hear me okay. It is a blessing to be here for our last gathering of the calendar year. It's remarkable to think that we began this journey just in the early summer in honor of Brother Kyle Berceau, and this gathering only continues to widen with every monthly gathering. And so we're very blessed and fortunate to have with us this evening Professors Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm, who are here with me in person. We're calling in from New Haven, Connecticut, on the ancestral lands of the Quinnipiac peoples. And we're very excited and honored that you took the time after just returning from China to be with us this evening. So Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm are affiliated faculty with the Yale Center for Environmental Justice at the Yale School of the Environment. They direct the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology, which arose from 10 conferences they organized at Harvard Center for the Study of World Religions. They are series editors of the Harvard volumes from the conferences on religion and ecology. Tucker specializes in East Asian religions, especially Confucianism, and Grimm specializes in indigenous traditions, especially Native American religions. Grimm and Tucker have written a number of books, including Ecology and Religion, and edited the Routledge Handbook of Religion and Ecology. They are editors for the series on ecology and justice from Orbis Books, and they've created 6 online courses in religions and ecology, restoring the Earth community. They were students of Thomas Berry and collaborated over several decades to edit his books. They also wrote Thomas Berry, a biography with Andrew Angyal in 2019. With his article, The New Story, Thomas Berry was a major inspiration for Journey of the Universe. And with Brian Thomas Swimme, Tucker and Grimm created this multimedia project that includes a book from Yale University Press, an Emmy Award-winning film, a series of conversations, and online courses from Yale Coursera. Until 2020, following in Berry's footsteps, Grimm served as president of the American Teilhard Association and Tucker as vice president for over 3 decades. So with that, I'd love to extend a very warm and in-person welcome to Mary Evelyn and John.
Thank you, Sam.
Good to be here.
Wonderful to be here. And we've just had a beautiful meal with Sam and Deanna. So we feel fortified, and we're so grateful to work with Sam these many years, who was a student at the Divinity School here. Now, we want to begin with a contemplation with a poem. And this is from a beautiful poet whose name is Catherine de Vink. And this book is called Journey to the Morning Light. She's a woman I knew from high school when her daughter and I were in the same class. She's a Mary Oliver, I would say, of the Christian tradition, and we're celebrating the beginning of Advent this week. And she, though, took this tradition into dimensions of the cosmos, which we value so much. And Father Garrick, it's an honor to be with you because we know you value this as well. So this particular poem is called Waking in the Cosmos. And we thought it was a good way to begin Advent and the season moving towards the solstice and moving towards a great celebration of birth and renewal. So it begins with a quote from David Tulin, who was a Jesuit who's passed away now, that his saying is, "The taboo against identifying with nature has been lifted. Star time, earth time, speak through us. We are their soul, sound, and tongue, the universe's strange attractors." And here's Catherine's poem. Not alien, yet too vast to imagine, this place we call home, this solitary jewel, sapphire on the throat of space. Do we have eyes for the patch of earth in the backyard? Do we feel the power of roots pushing the single grass blade to the light? Yet sometimes an archaic memory stirs us awake. We remember we are not alone, orphans lost in planetary storms. We swim breast to breast with other luminous bodies. Within our blood, stars flash their signals, rivers circuit their courses, seas fluctuate rhythmically, while the dust of dead constellation mingles with our bones. Turbulence, disorder, chaos define the necessity to translate the song of the ocean, to transect the arc of the sun, the orbit of the moon. We are the voice of plants, of animals, of stones. We speak for galaxies as well as for the common violet, both sisterly near, both alive, wedded to our fleshy heart. It's a long and beautiful poem, but maybe if we just sit for a few moments in silence and think about what it means to waking in the cosmos, waking up to and with the cosmos. We can enjoy this depth for a long time. And it takes us into a discussion that I just want to recall the importance of our teachers, our legacies, our ancestors, and all of them are with us here tonight, not just our ancestors, but yours as well. And the ancestors of the stars are with us tonight. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Mary Evelyn, for grounding us with that luminous and incredibly moving poem. And I thought it would be a good entry point to hear a little bit about your personal journeys into this generative intersection of religion and ecology and this cosmic sensibility that De Vinck really evokes in this incredible poem. So I'd love to hear just a glimpse perhaps into your life journeys and how you came to this confluence of religion and ecology in your journey.
Thanks, Sam. I want to express my feeling of compassion for all of you down in South Carolina suffering cold weather. I come from North Dakota, where, of course, cold weather is a way of life. And I grew up in a Catholic family in North Dakota. It was a hunting family. So I have very early memories of walking out and hunting game, and that game always came to the table. And so I have a feeling in my studies with Native American peoples, I share that sense of a people who still, by and large, hunt and who still have close relationships with their land. And I studied at the Benedictine University in Minnesota, St. John's University. And those Benedictines shaped my early intellectual quest. And they were the ones in my studies in history and religious studies, they said, you should go out to Fordham and meet Thomas Berry. And so I generally, when I talk with my students, I say the wind blew me east because anyone who knows that part of the world, the winds are very strong out there. And the day that there's no wind is an unusual day. And those winds carried me out to meet Thomas Berry, who was a formative influence on my life. He was transitioning or moving in his thinking as a cultural historian, focused on an understanding of the story that people told of themselves, the story that grounded them in reality. I can use the word cosmology to talk about the story of the universe. And Thomas realized that we lacked, in the modern world, we lacked a story that grounded us in our understanding of where the universe came from. And so he intentionally turned his studies in his program in the history of religions at Fordham University towards an investigation of the evolution of the universe itself and what would it mean to tell that as a story. So my experiences coming out of North Dakota and being shaped by an intellectual and a passionate priest like Thomas Berry, who gave a depth of meaning to something that I had been given in my youth, a whole sense of sacramental theology. I knew the closeness in the traditions that I was raised in. And also intellectually, I knew the sense of the logos, the incarnation, the sense of the person of Jesus and the Christ figure as related to the larger universe. So, Sam, those are major influences in my formation.
Well, that's a big question, and I think we can all explore our journeys together as Sam offers that question. And I just wanted to make a connection to the Abbey because I was very influenced by Thomas Merton, who was also a Trappist, and I understand the Trappist there at Gethsemane had something to do with founding it at your monastery as well. So the connections of a life are very mysterious, but Merton was important to me because I became very disillusioned in the 60s, and I had done a lot of political work. I'd worked on civil rights, the anti-Vietnam War in Washington, D.C., went to college at Trinity, where Nancy Pelosi went, and many other people who were older than me, but were very active politically too. And with the election of Nixon, I have to say, I got so disillusioned. I said, I'm going to Japan to teach at Trinity's College over there, and I won't come back until he's out of office. And I became so fascinated with, like Merton, with the Asian religions, especially Buddhism. And I came out of a Buddhist retreat in '74 in August, and I saw the headlines saying Nixon resigns. I said, I can come home again. And I traveled through Asia in those days, not developed at all, really, and just a fascinating experience. So, but while I was in Japan, I wrote to Thomas Berry for his book on Buddhism, and the miracle of my life is that he wrote back. But I did a lot of retreats in Japan, both Buddhist and Catholic retreats, to find my way forward. And the biggest opening was when I returned and met Thomas Berry at his research center in Riverdale and began studying with him at Fordham. And I'll stop here because I met John Grimm at Fordham. So that was the the delight of meeting both Thomas and John at Fordham, where we studied together and became very much inspired by him right down to today.
Well, so much to unfurl, to use that word, from those vignettes you shared, those just small glimpses into your incredibly remarkable life journey, your travels all across the world, your deep studies into the heart of various world religions and traditions. And I'm curious to hear, you both mentioned this kind of convergence by the Hudson River, also known as the river that runs both ways, and your studies with Thomas Berry. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how that setting along the Hudson River, the river that runs both ways, and studying at the Riverdale Center with Thomas Berry, how that animated your journey into really co-creating and being real trailblazers in this field of religion and ecology. I'm curious to hear your shared reflections on that period in your lives.
Thomas was a teacher who did not have a closed fist. He didn't hold his teachings tight to himself. He was an open palm teacher. And his dates help to give some sense. It's 1914 to 2009 when he passes. And so he grows up in this early period in North Carolina when development was just beginning to take place. And he recalls his early experiences of how disappointing it was when they put windows in cars. He remembers the wind blowing in, and he missed that, even the feeling of rain. And then another experience of a creek and the meadow across the creek. And over his lifetime of thinking, that image remained with him, and a realization that he had then that a really good economics would help that meadow flourish. A really good health system would help that meadow flourish. And it became a metaphor for him of what education was about, to bring about the flourishing of the human in relationship to the larger earth systems themselves. So Thomas brought his early insights to his teaching, and his teaching reached into the religions of the world, to use that phrase. He was very committed to his experiences in China in 1948 and the religions of East Asia. He was himself a cultural historian of the European scene, European and American scene, and he put intense efforts into learning the languages, Sanskrit, of South Asia and their classics. So he was teaching us this encounter with the world religions, and gradually he was asking the question, what's their relationship through their stories to the land and the biodiversity on which they live, and the sense of flourishing that meadow, to use that metaphor. How did religions interact with local bioregions for mutual flourishing? So studying with Thomas led eventually in 1977, before Mary Evelyn and I married in 1978. In that year, 77 to 78, I lived at the Riverdale Center along the Hudson, Sam, and watched that river move along with two others of us who were finishing our dissertations. And our time with Thomas was an extraordinary exchange and dialogue about our particular studies. I was studying healing traditions among a North American people called Ojibway or Anishinaabe, their name for themselves, and their healing practices. And so I would come to dinners and lunches, which would go on for some hours, and we would talk about our dissertation work. And Thomas would begin to give us his understanding of how he was developing this vision of religious traditions in right relationship with their land.
Yes, that was a year he called the Golden Year, where Brian Brown and John and another Jesuit actually was part of this extraordinary companionship, and I would join them for meals. And with this Riverdale Center along the Hudson that looked over towards the Palisades and these hundreds of thousands of year old mountains of granite, millions of years, gave us a sense of resilience, and despite all the upheavals that even then we were experiencing. And there was a great red oak in the back of this house that was over 400 years old, and there were many ceremonies around that tree, including blessings and baptisms and so on. But each month in this center, we would have, we ran the Teilhard Association, as Sam said, and we would have Teilhard meetings there at the first Saturday of each month. And it was Thomas's birthday in November, and he would always give that talk, but we invited other people to give talks, and then we had potluck dinners. And so what we were trying to do actually was, for the Teilhard Association, give a sense of community, but especially a community that surrounded Thomas as he was developing his own ideas, especially from the world's religions and their sense of what they offered in the modern period, the ecology that we later developed up at Harvard. But he was also moving towards this vision of the earth as sacred and the earth community as a sacred community, and moving towards this notion of a communion of subjects. So we were trying to create a communion around him that supported a very original, a very extraordinary vision that became Journey of the Universe, this film and book with Brian Swimme, who we've shared this journey for so many years. So the river that goes in both directions is because it's an estuary. So the salt water from the Atlantic would come up, and the fresh water from the Adirondacks would come down. And it was something of this meeting of tradition and modernity, of religious cultures and the environment, and what was needed for this time. And that's why Riverdale Center was an extraordinary place, revolving around a very special, unusual person, brilliant and visionary.
Wow. I love that synergy you bring up between the river as an estuary, as this, which are often some of the most biodiverse ecosystems, this, the brackish water of fresh and salt water, and this alchemical mixing, and how that was also reflected in your work and bringing together the religious wisdom of the world and in a sense of our embeddedness in the earth systems and our responsibility to rise to meet the emerging ecological crises of the 20th and 21st century. You mentioned Thomas's inspiration around Journey of the Universe, which I know deeply, as I was so influenced and inspired by watching the film that I eventually came to study with Mary Evelyn and John and to work with the Journey of the Universe film and multimedia project. But I'm curious to hear a little bit more, for those who might not be as familiar, about what inspired you to work with Brian Thomas Swimme to create this film and this book and this podcast series, and what are you trying to promote or inspire with this film?
The film was released in 2011, and it was made 10 years before, and maybe Emmy, you'll talk about the making of it, but when we mentioned that we worked on this film project for 10 years, some people are moved by that, to say, well, what gave you the energies to work on it for 10 years? And I think, my goodness, the conversations that preceded the actual 10 years of work were 30 years before that. All of these conversations with Thomas Berry, and Brian Swimme came to live in New York for a year, so we got to meet Brian well during those years. He studied with Thomas Berry, and then we went out to Berkeley for 3 years and storyboarded the film, if you catch my idea, of selecting what moments in telling this vast universe story, what moments do you select? The primal flaring forth and making of galaxies, solar systems. So this working together with Brian Swimme and Thomas, we would take our discussions to him, and these then became the structure for building the Journey of the Universe film. But before, Mary Evelyn, before you talk a bit more about the film, I just wanted to reflect for a moment on Thomas's key phrase. He would say, the universe is not a collection of objects, but a communion of subjects. And of course, a phrase like that, the collection of objects, comes across quite easily. It's not simply crass, dead, inert, material reality that we live amongst, but rather there's something that has depth to it. It communes with the diversity of life and the diversity of reality as we know it. And thinking about Thomas's use of that phrase put me in mind of my very early experiences of home, of animals, and the idea of biodiversity and dependence, and my studies with Indigenous people, have brought me into this reflection, how they see themselves and understanding of wearing feathers in your hair as a sign of being one with the birds and also the wind, and the sense of the movement of life, that the deep symbolic presence that Native people have woven into their lives has larger cosmological implications. The Crow people that Mary Evelyn and I have visited for so many years, and a family has taken us in and adopted us. The Crow people say that they are changing woman's grandchild. Changing woman is Venus. So they see themselves as coming from the star Venus. I think we know a planet in that sense, but the presence of a cosmological origin of a people. So all of these teachings are what I brought into the Journey of the Universe project, and they continue to inform my thinking about this incredibly challenging topic and understanding.
Yeah, so John first met Thomas in 68. I met him in 75. 78, he married us. And in 81, 82, we went to Japan to work on my dissertation, and John on shamanism in East Asia. And when we got back from Japan in 82, the fall, there was Brian. And Brian, we had heard about Brian from Thomas. He had met him just a couple times before that. And as John said, he lived in the area with his wife. And so we got to know Brian quite well during that year. And he would come to all these Teilhard gatherings and the potlucks and so on. And Brian and Thomas had also been working on the notion that they had to tell the universe story in a way that was mythically engaging and that it would light up the imagination. So they worked for 10 years on the universe story, and we were part of that. There was a conference out in the San Francisco area with many people discussing the manuscript. And anyway, it was a long process and lots of feedback and lots of changes. And then after that was published in 92, we were doing our conferences at Harvard. But when those were finished, Brian said, well, let's work on this film. So all of that is by way of just underscoring what John said. This was a decades-long process of thinking, how can this story be told in a way that was engaging? And so being out in Berkeley, we had to work together on this with a great director, actually David Kennard, who had worked closely with the BBC. He was British. We brought out a BBC crew to Samos, an island off the coast of Turkey, and we went there 3 times to figure out where we were going to film. Well, the first time where we were going to film, and then one whole section during the day, and then one whole section at night. So there's a lot of planning in the writing, in the filming, and the editing, and doing the book, and then a series of conversations with scientists and environmentalists. But I think what I want to underscore is this was such a gift to have, really, from Teilhard de Chardin, the first unfurling, to use Sam's word, of this is a story. We're part of something huge. Teilhard had a little more of the science base, and Thomas said, we've got to tell this as a story so it will reach even more people. So that's kind of the background of it. And it was a joy, even in the struggle, to work with Brian on this, an experience that I think we'll never, ever forget. And we had wonderful and very dedicated people to helping to make the film with us, the BBC crew, but editors back in California as well. So it was huge, but it was a sense of a vision carrying us forward.
Beautiful. And I hope those of you who haven't seen the film before will have a chance to do so. We're happy to share that for free with our audience here. And I know I've had the chance to screen the film and facilitate discussions in many different environments, and just seeing how much inspiration and imagination and wonder that this story of our emergence across 13.8 billion years can evoke. And the great sense of wonder at learning about the incredible precision of the creativity that has brought us forth against incredible odds. You know, even just looking at the expansion of the early universe, that if it had been 1/1,000,000th of 1% faster, it would have exploded, or 1/1,000,000th of 1% slower, the universe would have collapsed in on itself. And just that incredibly precise fine tuning has always really just stunned me. And when I remember that, it makes it that much more exciting and mysterious. And, you know, this experience of gratitude for the gift of being alive, you know.
Really, Sam, who could have predicted or understood we would meet so happenstance at a retreat center? And just a few time together, and now we have a life journey we share.
Absolutely. And, you know, forever grateful for that first encounter at a place called Wisdom House in the Berkshires, which is a Daughters of Wisdom retreat center where I first met Mary Evelyn and John. And, you know, it was also there where I met Brother Don Bassan, who first connected me to Mebkin Abbey. So, you know, these threads of interconnection are always so sacred, I think, to all of us who are on a spiritual path, and to think about the tributaries that bring us together and to our, you know, fullness of being, and to our, you know, our sense of a beloved community all around us. You know, we were talking about your experience of the film, and I know you just returned last week from China, where you had a chance to screen Journey of the Universe, and you've been there twice this year, facilitating dialogues around ecological civilization. And I'd love to share with our audience here, what were some of your reflections on sharing a film that's been translated into Chinese with a Chinese audience, and trying to bring together the sense of ecological civilization at this particular historical moment we're living in?
Well, it's always it's inspiring to us to talk about this, because China is in one of its greatest moments of transition, which most of us in the West don't know much about, and we're discovering in the last number of years that we've been able to be there, and we've been going since '85. So China is saying we must move from an industrial civilization. We've done our major modern development, and they have. It's unbelievable, the fast trains, the airports, it's staggering. It's a country that works, certainly in many ways. Politically, there's things to be said, but they are acknowledging that an ecological civilization is the future that they want to choose. It's in the Constitution, and every university is mandated to create a center for ecological civilization, et cetera. So it'd be comparable to sustainability here. But the difference is they include not just change of science and policy and law and technology, but values. So they're very keen to incorporate Confucianism and values from their own traditions that will move us in this larger direction. And as well, they have an openness to spirituality that's quite unusual. So when we show Journey of the Universe, this film has dimensions of all the world's religions. Like when Brian gets on the boat at the end, he says, what if we imagine ourselves as the mind and heart of the universe? That's Chinese. That's Confucian and Taoist. So just a couple things, and then I'll turn it over to John. It's amazing to see the response of Chinese students, both graduate and other students, and the faculty. Many administrators and faculty are there watching this. And they recognize their own Confucian tradition as part of this story. That's an affirmation that they truly appreciate. But they are also very aware of environmental problems. I would say even more than in our own Western United States. 95% of people in China know climate change is real and urgent. So this gives them a sense of hope and possibility. that they belong to something and that they can do something. So I will leave it at that because there's so much more to say, but it's very inspiring to show it and to get the feedback and discussion with them on the film.
That's lovely. We were there for the month of November. And so we had, again, returning the second time this year, a chance to think about the talks that we were giving, the conferences we were participating in. And I recall now when we were going to show Journey at a university near Datong to the west of Beijing, about the distance from New York to Chicago away. Took a fast train out there, and as we were talking with faculty, some of them said, you know, our students in China are very committed to STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and they're very analytically oriented, so they may not understand the large vision that's being laid out in Journey. And so as we thought about that, so another one of the faculty said, by the way, do you know what Datong means, the city that we're in? And I said, I don't. And they said, Da is the great and Tong is the unity. It's a concept that's very old in China, this sense of the great unity. And of course, we find ourselves, Mary Evelyn and I, whenever we stand in front of an audience in China, we say to them, you know, we come in friendship. We come to acknowledge that there are problems between our two countries with our competition in trade and world leadership, but we're here face to face to renew the kind of friendship that we know the Chinese people value between the United States. And faculty members and students rise up. And so one of the faculty members came up after I had made that remark and said, you know, Datong, this idea of Datong is really important in China. It's an idea of the great unity behind the Han culture that made China what it is. And its thought struck me right away. What journey of the universe is in China is a new Datong. It's a new great unity. And so we begin to talk about that with audiences. And it's amazing how faculty and students respond immediately to that. It's not as if Journey replaces any of the old stories, but Journey opens up understanding the old stories in a new way. And I think this is what Thomas was really driving for with his idea of a new story, something that brings us into all of our contemporary life to acknowledge what it is that we live with and change, transform what we have to in order to flourish the world, but to go forward with a new vision of our way into this great unity that we're part of. Yeah.
Nice.
Wow, well, I'd love to dovetail on your reflections on China by hearing a little bit more from you about the Forum on Religion and Ecology, which you have spent so many decades bringing together and helping to midwife from these series of conferences on world religions and ecology at Harvard. And you know, as we think about this sort of interpollination of these communities, the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology, this emerging Mebken Abbey Forum for Contemplative Ecology, what resources and opportunities have you co-created with the forum, and how might that help support the ongoing vision of the Mebken Abbey Forum for Contemplative Ecology, among other communities that are trying to awaken this sense of the sacredness of our Earth community?
Well, we do have online courses that Sam and Anna Thurston helped us create during the COVID period, and Sam can describe those extremely well, because what we were trying to do was offer courses to a general public, not just to academics, but that would say, okay, here's Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Here's East Asian traditions. What does it have to say for our Earth community? And we're saying in these courses, there's one on Western religions and Asian religions, South Asia and East Asia. and indigenous traditions, as well as one just on Christianity. But we're saying about all of these religions that they're not perfect. We all know they have institutional flaws for sure, but even in living the aspirations of these traditions, we know that just like humans, we can't always live up to our own hopes and expectations and goals. But it is to say that all societies and cultures are deeply influenced by their religious traditions, even if people aren't practicing them, they're part of the values. In other words, and so we've got to use this sensibility of meaning making, of symbol making, of dealing with the depths of suffering that Buddhism does, that Christianity does, and so on. We've got to incorporate this spiritual search that the Abbey represents here, that Merton represented for so many people, and so on. We have to take that as part of who we are as humans and why the environment is not just something out there, but something in here. That all the traditions have this sense of our body and God's body. You know, many eco-theologians are writing about Sally McFaig and Rosemary Ruther and so on, are writing about this identity of the person and the earth and the cosmos. That's why we began with that beautiful prayer of the cosmos. So, and certainly that's what Taoism is doing. As you cultivate your own body, you're in touch with Earth's body and so on, and Confucianism, etc. So we could talk forever about what these resources are, but what would you like to add?
One great resource is the forum website at the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology, and that's available to anyone through simply the letters FORE at .yale.edu. But I also wanted to mention Doug Christie's work, The Blue Sapphire of the Mind on Contemplative Ecology. And it strikes me that that's an entry into an affirmation of what the Abbey is about in our contemporary scene too, that Doug is really exploring in that magnificent book, this interior, Emmy, that you were mentioning too, the sense of the journey within, turning within, and understanding that in all traditions participate in this depth of inner search. And certainly within the variety of Christian traditions, you find the contemplative tradition has so much to say about the inner landscape of the mind. And I find it fascinating that similar language emerges in Taoism, in the Chinese tradition of Taoism, the inner landscape of the mind related to the outer landscape of the natural world, and hence these beautiful landscape paintings. And again, just to go back into the Western tradition, the turning within of the contemplative traditions in the West, and my own experiences with Benedictine monks, and the attention to singing, the attention to sound, the attention to words, this idea of giving attention is such a cosmological call. The world attends to us, and indigenous traditions are very aware of that. They speak of a giving world and a watchful world. It's a world which is constantly giving and attending to us, and it calls for the human to give back and to attend to the world. So I find a very close match in the contemplative traditions in the West with indigenous peoples and their very clear virtue and value transmitted to youth, how to listen to the world. It's speaking to you. The world is constantly revealing itself. And Thomas Berry had this wonderful medieval, he retaught all of us students of the beauty of the scriptures as revelation, the natural world as revelation, history as revelation, and the inner human heart. And I feel contemplative ecology then explores this inner landscape, to use the phrase of Gerard Manley Hopkins, the inscape of our soul.
Well, I think that's a powerful invitation, perhaps, to enter into that inscape individually and as a community here, and perhaps to take some of these wonderful insights that Mary Evelyn and John have shared and to take a little bit of time to reflect in our small breakout rooms. And so I'd love to invite us to spend about 10 minutes, maybe after a moment of silence and reflection, to enter into these small breakout rooms and have a chance to share what really resonated with us from what we've heard so far. Maybe how an idea that Mary Evelyn and John shared might connect to our own journey, as well as what questions are emerging for us. So I'd invite our wonderful assistant Joy to work her technical magic and sort us into these various communities. And we'll see you in about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Sam.
So I think what we'll do is, why don't, are you okay that we'll join one together? And, yeah, and then we'll put it on gallery.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had, hopeful reflections and some generative dialogue in your small breakout rooms, and maybe some leftover Thanksgiving too, as John is quipping over here. So at this point in the gathering, we'd love to open up the space for questions and reflections that emerged from our small breakout rooms. So I'd invite you to use the raised hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen under the reaction button. Or you can put a question in the chat, and I'll do my best to get to as many folks as possible.
Okay, there's
I think I see a hand.
two.
Yeah, two hands coming from our friends in Florida.
Ah,
Yeah.
Hi, is this, or were you talking to us?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the courses that you have that are available and what sort of groups they might be able to be used for. my church kind of okayed the idea of having an adult Sunday school class about contemplative ecology. And the one thing that I did find just didn't seem like it was a very good fit for the church. And I just wondered if you could talk about whether there's anything that is appropriate for just a church adult class, if that's one of the kind of things that's offered or not. So thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, these are on Coursera. I don't know if you know that platform. It's online and they're free for audit.
Spell it.
Coursera, like course with an A. And I think Sam can send you a lot of this information on the forum website and so on. You'll be able to just click. But there's a class on Christianity that might be interesting, and all the classes are about 6 weeks.
Perfect.
Just all you have to do is, once a week session if you want, like after church on Sunday or some evening. And as I say, they're free for audit, and they've got lectures, they've got readings, and if you pay, which is, I don't think that much, is it 79 or
I believe
27?
it's about $40.
$40. Anyway, then you can get access to little quizzes if you want to do that or not. But I think if you just go to Coursera and you look for, but there's also courses on Journey of the Universe.
Yeah.
So you might,
was-
Thomas Berry. Yeah, you might want to do that. One of those. So, Google Journey of the Universe, Coursera, Journey of the Universe, Thomas Berry, you'll be able to find them.
Yeah, I would recommend those three. We have 9 courses, I believe, in total, and 3 of them are directly related to our topic tonight. The course on Journey of the Universe is the book and the film. And then a second course on Journey of the Universe is on the conversation, the interviews that Mary Evelyn did with scientists and environmentalists. They're all very interesting. And the third one is on the thought of Thomas Berry. So they would all lend themselves to a church adult education group very easily.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, as somebody who helped create the courses with Mary Evelyn and John, they are just treasure troves of scriptures, of interviews with scholars and theologians and religious leaders, and highlights of grassroots religious environmentalism that is highlighting the way that various Christian and other religious communities are acting on the climate crisis and on biodiversity restoration and other issues of environmental justice. There's a whole unit on environmental justice, which emerged from Reverend Robert Bullard in the UCC tradition in that Christianity and Ecology course. So you can look at the link in the chat and click the free courses button, and you can choose to audit the course for free on the Coursera platform. And it would be such a wonderful opportunity for a Sunday school or a evening, once a week study or discussion group for your community.
Great. Thank you so much.
I think
Absolutely. And I'm seeing Maritza's hand up. I'd love to hear from Maritza.
Hello, my name is Marita, and I started in Santa Clara County, diocese, a group on the environment, Stewards of Our Common Home. And my question is, we're in Silicon Valley. We're fairly, consumer-oriented society because people have money. And we've done some things that are beneficial, but what do you find, John and Evelyn and Sam, is a way to engage people in terms of connecting with the earth, I'm not talking about people like those of us here who are very committed and who have, different contemplative, experiential experiences, have read, have studied. But, for people who are, even Pope Francis said, we're living in this age, what did he call it? Where everything is going faster. So people don't have a lot of time. And so how, if you were with well, do you have any thoughts to help those of us in the United States who are trying to, bring this to people in a way that gets their attention and engagement, the word engagement?
Yep.
Yeah.
John, I think has something
Well,
to say.
probably all of us do. I love the sound of your voice. The passion comes across, and my first reaction is the sense of story. This exchange that we're having this evening is focused on contemplative ecology, which many people might not know what exactly that means, but the one way to think about it is our inner world and the story that we have of ourselves in relationship to reality. Now, I find that's one of the first ways to get face to face with someone or even with a community. What's your story of who are you and where do you come from? And when people begin to tell their story, then I think it opens us up to some of the other issues that are a little more difficult to challenge and certainly don't work well as an initial conversation, namely about consumption or how much we all tend to surround ourselves with stuff today. And so the beginning with story would be my contribution.
Yeah, and I would just say, because I want to hear what Sam has to say too, and I see another hand. I would say food, health, and children. That's the environment. If
Mhm.
we don't have healthy food, and we have a country that is over 60–70% obese, that's passed on to Europe, it's passing on to Asia. So food, health, huge numbers of cancer, things related to the environment, and children, what are we going to give to our next generation? That's
Yes.
where we begin.
Mm.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sam.
I was just going to add briefly to echo, yes, storytelling, food, health, children, absolutely. And one of the most memorable and informative experiences I've had with children is doing contemplative forest bathing.
Yes, that's what
For instance, the Lectio Terra practice that we have done at Mepkin Abbey on a few different retreats, as well as what's called a sit spot, which is just simply unplugging, being outside. And I've heard elementary school educators do it the best, and inviting folks to really experience the world with their owl eyes, their raccoon touch, and their deer ears, and to just allow us to take in the splendor of our surroundings. And I think children have this innate sensibility that is sometimes covered over, but never fully lost in the adult imagination. And so I think inviting ourselves and our communities into those experiences, even in short interludes, can open us up into this profound sense of wonder and interconnectedness.
Beautiful.
I see our friend.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Marita. Thank you. Our friend Angela Mano, who joined us back in October, and it's so great to have you here, Angela.
Hi, Angela.
It's great to see the three of you, and welcome home, John and Mary Evelyn.
Thank you.
It's great to have you back. Now, the discussion reminded me of something I just read about, which, John, you might know of this film. It's called Standing in the Light. And it's a film about a Quaker teenager who was captured by the Lenape
Well, could very
in
well.
1764.
Uh-huh.
And you could see it on Amazon Prime, apparently.
Mhm.
And what really struck me about this, I haven't seen it yet, I just learned about it, that she is taken, this young woman is taken with her brother to replace Lenape children who have died. And gradually she comes to understand that their great spirit and the inner light of the Quakers are the same.
Mhm.
And so, you know, that when we're talking about the inner world and our contemplative traditions in the West, and then the kind of the way the our indigenous people on this continent, their prayer is very demonstrative, you know, but still there's that meeting of both the inner light and the great spirit, which is everywhere. So I wanted to get your take on it, John, if you're you know, how you see those two coming together, the inner light and the great spirit.
Well, that's a beautiful statement, and certainly it is Quaker Moravian peoples who often had some of the most and earliest acceptance of Native people as being fully human, fully religious in that sense. You're referencing this film, which I have not seen, but it makes me aware that there's a large body of literature generally referred to as the captive narratives, and they're 17th, 18th century narrations of people who were lived among Native people because they were captured. And as you indicated, they often replaced people who had died. So they were adopted into families, and they were captives so that they were not allowed to live. And sometimes their stories are horrendous and the difficulties they faced. The point I would like to make is there are equal number of stories of those who were captured and held by Native people who did not want to leave. Some of the captive narratives also come to that point. The majority do not, because it's a literature which was also fostered in a time period in which Native peoples and the lands of Native people especially were the focus to remove Native people from the land. And so there was a real animosity and a sense of pushing Native peoples away. But to just return to the point you were making also of the inscape that I wanted to sound earlier in speaking about it, and then the inner life, Native peoples around the continent introduced their children early on to a vision experience. They prepared them for going alone into a certain place and to have an experience that they wouldn't necessarily need to talk to other people about other than elders, but to come back, if possible, with an experience of the world having spoken to them. It gave them, that opened up what you've referred to as this inner light or inner knowledge. And so it's a really beautiful moment that you've given to this evening's talk about how traditions talk to one another, and about how such a thing as contemplative ecology is a phrase we can use. We can find it describing the religious experience found around the planet.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah, thank
Angela.
you, Angela. We'd love to hear next from Diana and Gerard, who I know have been regular participants in our circle. Great to see you both.
Thank you, Sam. It's good to see you again. You're looking well. Looks like you all must have had a very fine dinner.
We did.
We did.
Loved it.
Dan and I, yeah, we enjoy this, and we missed last month, so it's good to be back. Yes, I was just looking up Da Tung, on their website. There's a company and it's a city, and it means unity, and it also has great china. They make handmade china there, apparently.
Uh-huh.
Have you been there, or have you all visited?
Yes, we have. Mary
Yeah.
Evelyn twice, yeah.
Huh. It also says that this is the point I was aiming for.
The great
A
Buddhist.
person possessed by the gods or supernatural spirits is called the Lauya. And quote, all have special ability and power. People from the villages come to them to ask about their own futures, fortune, love life, or career.
It's the shamanic person that's being described, as I take it. Did you, is
Yeah.
that, you wanted to pursue a bit? You wanted to question that?
Well, yeah, I had another question or comment too that I was going to get to, but I just wanted to put it out there to piggyback on what you all were saying on
Good.
it. I just learned it here, and I guess you would probably have something. What would you say about it?
Well, it is the case that traditions which are ancient often preserve stories of those women or men who had exceptional powers of healing or of charismatic presence, that they could help people move through difficulties in their life, whether it was personal health or psychological problems. And we have tended to push that to the margins in our rational scientific attitudes towards interior life. But I also wanted to call Mary Evelyn out to talk about another dimension of Datong that she visited with her sister in 1985.
The Buddhist caves?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear your second question, actually, but it is a place that has some of the most famous Buddhist carvings into the sides of mountains. So if you continue your search, look for Datong Buddhist
Yeah.
caves. I recommend that. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Well, I have two very short ones. I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize. Is there any hands up? No, not right now, perhaps. But the first one is very short. You mentioned the golden year. Thomas talked about what year was that, out of curiosity?
77 to 78. I came in autumn of 77, and Mary Evelyn and I were married in the summer of 78.
Oh, that was your golden year.
Yeah,
And for Thomas,
Thomas
and for
called it golden year.
and so Thomas named it that, and in honor of you all, and in honor of of everything, apparently, of that time. That was a good time of year. I was out in California then, and Diana was in Peace Corps then. Well, thank you. And then the third one is very brief too, unless you want to take off on this, Mary Evelyn or John. We have our own here in Winston-Salem. We have our own little community, and unfortunately, a lot of them have passed on to resurrected life. And I wanted to mention B. Bruteau and Jim Somerville.
Oh, yes, lovely to hear.
Yeah.
B and Jim.
Yes.
You
Well, these were great Teilhardians and wonderful couple, and she wrote many books and very inspiring to many, many people.
She was instrumental in the founding of the American Teilhard Association in 1967, but her work began in 64 to help organize that association.
They were wonderful. We got to know them too because they lived on the edge of town like we do. They came from Cincinnati, and then Jim came from Fordham, and so did B. So there's a Fordham connection too, right?
Yes, very much
definitely.
so.
And they did teaching meditation workshops in their home. It was very
Wonderful.
nice. And book study. Yeah.
Thomas,
B's book, we did all of the Eastern Mysteries at Bee's home.
Hmm,
Wonderful. She was a very special person.
hmm.
Thank you for bringing them into the reflections tonight.
Mm.
Our
Mm.
ancestors.
Right.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Gerard and Diana. We're seeing another question in the chat that's really thought-provoking that I'll read aloud to Mary Evelyn and John. How can we counter all of the pressure from business in the US to consume, to eat more, buy more, have more? I appreciate all the organizations that you have on that link, but just turn on a TV or go on social media and you're overwhelmed with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, etc.
Wow.
A man looks at all the packages that arrived at his door and says, "We're going to need a bigger tree." How do you change that way of thinking?
Mhm.
Oh, my.
Well, go ahead.
Please.
Well, I think it's the question, isn't it? I mean, there's just no more important question, but, you know, I think we created an American dream that's actually materialism, and now materialism gone mad, and it's a broken dream, and that's why Thomas's book in '88 was The Dream of the Earth, to get away from that very false dream. And I don't have a particular, formula or answer. I think we all have to find our way into it, but I mean, I could give you my own examples and so on, but the Oxford English Dictionary today came up with a word. They come up with one word each year as a new word. And this year they came up with brain rot, R-O-T, which means the effect of the internet, of social media, of everything that was mentioned in this important question, and what it's doing to the brain. You just take emails, which fragment the brain, and then you add social media, which I don't do any of. I think we have to protect ourselves. There's going to be bad news overwhelmingly over the next 4 years. We've got to say we can't absorb it all. This is why contemplative ecology is very, very important.
Yep.
We can't buy it all, have it all, or whatever. My family, for example, for Christmas, I had 7 children. My parents said to us when we were quite young, he said, "We don't need anything. What we're going to do for you all is buy one record in those days and one book." And I would go out with my parents, my mother, and buy that book for each one of the family members. And they would maybe give us a little bit of money to put away for savings for whatever, college. And they said, for you, for us, you take one story in the New York Times of the neediest cases, and you decide which ones you want to put your money together and give to the neediest cases. And Christmas morning was the most meaningful thing after church, when we would open up that little box and read the story of the neediest cases. These are very simple things. They can be done. John and I never give presents to each other on Christmas or birthdays or whatever. It's not that hard, but I think it takes a little bit of conscious thought. And anyway, it's the most important question we can ask. I'm offering very simple little answers. But John, you were
Well,
gonna
I
say-
just think you're mentioning contemplative ecology again, the sense of simplicity of life in the monastic tradition. It's part of the religion of the West, and it's something we need to recover, the capacity for simple life. And my feelings earlier talking about attending and understanding the giving world, that the contemplative tradition in our monastic world is so close, I find, to indigenous elders and how they try to transmit to the young people among their communities a simplicity of life, and learning how to really listen and take the time to listen, so that pulling back from consumption isn't simply into a void, but rather we have a world around us which is speaking to us. And I think that's a world we need drink and eat more deeply of than simply at the larder.
What would you say, sir?
Mm.
Or do you
Well, I
want to?
think you, shared a lot more than I could about this ethic of radical simplicity. And I think all the monks at Mebkin Abbey
Mhm.
are a real inspiration in this measure, whether we live in a monastery or not. How do we,
Mm.
um, how do we decrease, so that something larger than ourselves may increase, and to humble ourselves before a presence much, much greater,
Mm.
that experience of soulful kenosis or self-emptying
Mhm.
comes to mind,
Mhm.
Mm.
I see Sarah's hand is up. I know we're coming toward the end of our program, but yeah, hopefully we'll have a chance to hear from her.
So tomorrow is Giving Tuesday. So do you recommend any particular ecological organizations for us to donate to?
Earth Justice, they do some amazing work for environmental justice cases. I think many of the large organizations, National Resource Defense Council,
Yeah.
is a very good one. Also the what is it? The chefs, the world.
Oh.
Central Kitchen.
Yeah, the World Central
Chef,
Kitchen,
that's it.
I think is really fantastic what they're doing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Angela gives a portion of her proceeds from her icons of threatened and endangered species, if I remember correctly, to the Center for Biological Diversity.
Mhm.
Yes.
Organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a great organization.
Now, I also like to find the local communities that are helping the homeless that we have here in New Haven,
Mhm.
Columbus House.
Yeah.
And I like that being able to support local
Mhm.
Yeah.
philanthropy.
And also the ones helping the refugees and the migrants. Iris is one
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
You see, these are why the environmental issues and
Yeah.
migration is part of climate change. So
Yeah.
everything's connected. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we have a wonderful local organization called City Seed that's trying to bring farmers
Excellent.
markets and local organic food to underserved communities, unhoused people. So bringing together environmental justice and social justice. I think those are, some really wonderful organizations to help support.
And what's amazing now is they're everywhere.
Mhm.
These kinds of local or regional organizations are,
Mhm.
and their websites are available to us.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think, was it Maddie who may have had her hand up? We've perhaps time for one more question.
Hi, thank you so much. I'll be brief. I want to begin with deep gratitude. Oh my goodness, especially for everything, but especially what you offered about China. That to me was the most hopeful news I could possibly hear tonight. I'm so grateful. I also, Sam knows that I was here for a talk by Dearman Omerchu in Ireland, and was actually able to be with him at an eco-spirituality retreat at Ard's Friary in Donegal. And that was my second year with Victoria Lures from the Wild Church. And I mention this because I have this year been introduced to someone that I will write to Sam and hopefully be able to connect with you two. And who knows, maybe come and sit in that lovely room and have tea one day. But it's with Marko Pogacnik, who is in Slovenia and who has brought forward a practice. Someone asked earlier about practice. And I was in the forest in Ireland when I was first learning this, and it's called Gaia Touch, Gaia Touch. And he has written so many books, very connected with Rudolf Steiner and other things that you'll know. And his latest book is called Creating Gaia Culture. And I just have started reading Christ Power and Earth Wisdom in Search of the Fifth Gospel. And all of this is just riveting. It's so thrilling. And then I also have John Philip Newell's The Great Search. You mentioned The Search. But thank you so much for what you've offered. I'm an oblate in the community of the Transfiguration in Cincinnati, but I live in the Hickory Nut Gorge at Bat Cave in Western North Carolina. And I'm here at their retreat house and hope to get to Mepkin Abbey. But I wanted to just make the connection and give deep gratitude to all of you. And I love this setting. Sam, you're always a wonderful facilitator, but I feel like I'm sitting in the room with you. It's just been lovely. Thank you. So nourishing. Thank you all.
Beautiful.
Thank
you.
you.
so
Thanks for
much.
bringing your trees into our.
I'm a nature and forest therapy guide too, so I do forest bathing or Shinrin Yoku here on the land.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oh. Well, I'll ask Mary Evelyn and John, do you have any parting words or message you'd like to share as we come to a close this evening?
Again, I love Thomas's phrase, the universe is not a collection of objects, but a communion of subjects. And I hope all of you in the upcoming days can hug a tree and talk with a bird and hear the wind on your shoulders and go in peace.
Yeah, it's lovely. Well, it's been beautiful to be with you all, and I thank Sam for his excellent facilitating, and I thank Mepkin Abbey for hosting us, and wonderful to have that sense of continuity with Merton and contemplation for action. So we need both clearly, and just thank you, and may each one of you flourish in your life journey as well. Thank you.
Deep gratitude to Mary Evelyn and John. Yeah. Thank you everybody for being here this evening. We'll be back next month with Sister Kathleen Dagnan to begin the new year with her deep wisdom and nourishment. So we hope to see you in January. Have a blessed evening, everybody. Thank you.
All best.
Yeah.
Bye.